So, you've completed all the global events several times and have tons of classified gear stockpiled in your player stash. Well, what if I told you one of those gear sets has incredible potential for both squad PvE and PvP action, and not many players use it or know much about it? In this field guide, I will be showing you everything you need to know about one of the strongest multi-purpose gear sets in the game. Of course, I'm speaking about defense. What's going on, agents? It's LtBuzzLitebeer, and I want to apologize to you in advance for how long it has taken me to get to the point of publishing this defense field guide. You see, RNG was not on my side, and between the original Strike Global event and the rerun, which just finished last week, I opened in upwards of 160 superior caches and could not loot the defense classified mask. Without that necessary piece to complete the entire 6-piece set, I had no reason to get this field guide resource edited and published for YouTube. Now that all changed recently in a Westside Pier Resistance run, and now I am finally able to get this video out and ready. Listening to your votes on a recent Twitter poll I conducted, there was a really tight voting race between a video just about the classified defense gear set and a video that was basically defense for dummies, where I needed to start from ground zero for those of you who have never used this gear set. Now, since these votes were so close, I'm going to combine your format request into this field guide that will cover the following topics. First off, I'm going to explain what defense is and does for both the 4-piece non-classified and 5- and 6-piece classified versions. Next, I will show you how to mod your classified gear pieces for either PvP, PvE, or like what I use, a hybrid combo of both. Then, I'm going to decipher all the different gear and performance mods because I receive so many questions about these and how best to mod for defense. We can't forget weaponry, so I will cover that in detail. Next up will be talents and skills, because these are extremely important for a D3 user. And finally, we'll finish up this field guide with some tips and tricks, like a situational awareness guide for defense users. For those of you that want to skip around and reference these different sections, I have included a timestamp in the video description below. And without wasting any more time, let's jump right in. Defense was the last gear set added to the division and was first unveiled in Update 1.5 and was originally intended to be named the Frontline gear set. The moniker D3-FNC, or Defense, was adopted at launch and required 4 pieces of gear in order to unlock all the gear set bonuses. Now, since this gear set has had its bonuses changed several times, let's quickly take a look at the current version of the non-classified gear and discuss the bonuses it awards. The 2-piece bonus grants players an additional 15% protection from elites. The 3-piece bonus awards the player's ballistic shield with 10% additional damage resilience, and the 4-piece bonus unlocked the frontline bonus, which when used, your ballistic shield has no skill mod active. It will no longer remove critical chance from your weapon, and SMGs can be equipped, and ballistic shield health is increased by 57% for every 3,000 stamina. For players that used the defense gear set prior to Update 1.8, the 3- and 4-piece bonuses have been significantly modified from those when it launched. Prior to Update 1.8, the 3-piece bonus was 15% damage to elites, and the 4-piece bonus allowed a player to select a specific ballistic shield talent like Assault or Kinetic Breaker and have them activated while the shield was deployed. In addition, once deployed and firing your SMG, all critical hit chance was removed from your weapon. Now, there were plenty of ways to get around the lack of crit hit chance, including weapon mods and pulse, and in combo with the assault shield, the 4-piece bonus was extremely powerful. So powerful, in fact, that the defense gear set has seen a cycle of steady nerfs, including reducing foot speed when having the shield deployed, and 2 times player damage versus the shield in Update 1.6.1. We now have a 4 times player damage versus the shield in Update 1.8. And with that being said, I do not recommend you attempt to wield the shield in PvP unless you have the full classified version, as the shield itself just isn't able to withstand players firing at it and will quickly fail. Classified gear set pieces were introduced in Update 1.8 and further enhanced the strength of this gear set and once again made it viable in PvP. The 2, 3, and 4-piece bonuses remain unchanged from the non-classified to classified versions, but with non-classified gear pieces, this is where the bonuses end. Classified gear pieces extend the defense gear set with a 5-piece bonus of 15% more protection from elites and 5% more ballistic shield damage resilience. If you have all 6 pieces of classified gear, the defense gear set goes to insane levels of tankiness by unlocking improved frontline. Now, there is a lot to this bonus, so here we go. When the ballistic shield is deployed, melee damage is increased by 2000%, and all overhealing the player receives is applied to the ballistic shield as healing. After receiving a damage threshold for receiving physical or exotic damage, the ballistic shield grants a buff to the agent and all group members within 15 meters for 6 seconds. The duration of the buff is increased by 2 seconds for every 3,000 stamina the agent has. The physical damage buff increases armor by 30%, while the exotic damage buff increases weapon damage by 30%. That is a lot of verbiage and numbers thrown at you, so let me break it down in simple to understand terms. When you have all 6 pieces of classified defense gear equipped, your agent will receive 30% additional protection from elites, 15% additional ballistic shield damage resilience, 371% ballistic shield health assuming that you have at least 9k stamina, 2000% additional shield bash damage, overhealing for your shield, and 12 seconds of either a 30% armor buff or 30% weapon damage buff based on whatever damage threshold you reach and assuming that you have at least 9k stamina. And all of these classified gear set attributes stack on top of what the Master Mod Ballistic Shield mod already provides, which is a baseline of 10% increased weapon damage and 10% increased damage resistance when the shield is deployed. Now we will get more into how these stats stack and how best to mod your classified gear set later on in this field guide, but for now, let's take an in-depth look at the individual gear set pieces and how to best mod them. With the addition of classified gear pieces in Update 1.8, we now have the ability to recalibrate 2 different attributes or main stat roles instead of high-end or non-classified gear, which only allows for 1 item to be recalibrated. This means you should be able to better dial in your build to the exact specs you want and for the work you plan on attempting with it. For a 6-piece classified defense build, the first item you should always concentrate on is reaching the 9k stamina plateau and plan accordingly with gear mods or main stat attribute roles. As you see me break down each gear piece and the best selections for your recalibrations, keep in mind that since I do not have enough defense gear to complete a strict PvE and PvP build, I have created a hybrid of the two that allows me to tackle both without recalibrating each time before entering the different combat arenas. First up is the body armor. Now the body armor can roll with a native armor roll ranging from a minimum of 1,704 up to a maximum of 2,003, along with 1 main stat roll between 1,274 and 1,401. In addition, it comes with 2 secondary rolls of a fixed amount of 205. Major attributes include enemy armor damage, resist all, health, health on kill, exotic damage resilience, and skill haste. Minor attributes are limited to XP on kill and ammo capacity. To help you better understand these different attributes, let's take the time to discuss each one and make informed decisions from there. Enemy armor damage can help you versus veteran and elite level NPCs as the majority of their damage resistance is built into their armor. For PvP, enemy armor damage is virtually useless and accounts for minuscule amounts of additional damage versus other agents. Resist all can help against all status effects instead of having to choose the individual status effect you want to try to counter. Health has been buffed in Update 1.8 and can be accounted for in a simple conversion of 30 points of health can give you the same effect as 1 point into stamina. Health on kill is scarce in the game and rolls on the body armor in its highest amount of 5%, which is great outside of using Nomad. Exotic damage resilience can be rolled in its highest amounts of 11% both on the body armor and mask, and can be useful in PvP and PvE action to help mitigate explosive damage from mortars, grenades, or the Predator's Mark bleed status effect. And finally, Skill Haste, which can be found in a maximum roll of 9% both here on the body armor and on the gloves. Skill Haste can be useful if you have had your shield stripped off and need time to reset the cooldown timer, or for spamming skills like the EMP Sticky or Flame Turret. So, looking back on the major attribute choices, let's decide which to roll as our major attributes based on our needs and which would be the most efficient use of our rolls. SMGs have no native enemy armor damage, and you will struggle a bit while using one to strip high-level NPCs of their armor. But at only 6% for a maximum EAD roll, this is an inefficient use of one of our major attributes. We can easily pick up a bit of enemy armor damage by equipping an SMG with Destructive, which grants the user 15% enemy armor damage. In addition, the 6% roll is less than the 8% you can obtain on the gloves, and in general, I do not recommend you go for this major attribute on your body armor. Resist All is easily the worst major attribute selection for any of your gear, and I would avoid it at all costs, especially when you consider you can roll individual status effect resistances at a maximum of 33% on your Kneepads. Health can be rolled on the body armor and Kneepads at its highest percentage amounts available, and is one of my choices for my body armor major attributes. At a maximum roll of 16,674, this translates into the equivalent of 556 points of stamina, which is slightly more than 2 perfectly rolled stamina mods. Health on kill can roll at 5% on the body armor, which is maximum percentages available on any of the gear pieces, but in general, this is a poor choice for a defense gear set for 3 reasons. The first is that for squad PvP, you will generally have a healer on the squad that can help keep you topped up, and with that much stamina and shield health, you are extraordinarily tanky. The second is that with that much stamina, 5% health on kill will add only a small amount to your recovery, and you could be much better served by consuming a medkit. And the third and final reason is that for PvE action, we can simply equip a weapon with Predatory, which grants us a continual heal upon killing an NPC of 35% over 20 seconds. Exotic damage resilience can be found in its largest percentages of 11% both on the body armor and mask, and PvPers might initially be pulled towards this major attribute. However, with a shield that can mitigate extreme amounts of damage, and as long as you can rotate quickly to face the blast direction of a grenade or mortar strike, this tends not to be needed with a proper defense build. Skill Haste can be rolled at 9%, which is the maximum percentage you can find on gear pieces outside of using Tactician's Authority, and I use this as my second major attribute. Now inevitably, there will be times you are taking so much incoming damage that the shield will break, and it is at times like those that you will want Skill Haste to reduce your shield cooldown timer. It is also extremely handy when engaging in PvP for getting back your EMP Sticky to negate the striker stacks which an attacking agent can build by shooting at your shield. For PvE action, Skill Haste is nice to have in high-level missions for gaining back your turret, self-heal, or pulse much faster. So to quickly recap, for both PvP and PvE, I use Health and Skill Haste on my body armor as they are the most efficient attributes available, and help bolster our defense build with extra tankiness and the ability to gain our skills back nearly 10% faster. I have also chosen Firearms as my main stat roll for the body armor, and this is not a requirement, just as long as one of your pieces other than the holster is rolled for Firearms. This allows me to unlock weapon talents that require 3,833 in Firearms, and any little extra you can pick up in Firearms is a smart choice. If you are strictly building for PvE, you could select enemy armor damage, health on kill, or exotic damage resilience, but these substitutions are really not that efficient. For the minor attribute, I would always recommend more ammo capacity over XP on kill, as you will be firing your SMG a majority of the time, and you don't want to run out of primary ammo in the middle of a firefight. Next up is the mask, which can roll with a native armor value ranging from 852 up to a maximum of 1001, and like the body armor, will include one main stat roll between 1274 and 1401, and 2 fixed secondary rolls of 205. Major attributes include critical hit chance, enemy armor damage, resist all, health on kill, exotic damage resilience, and skill power. Minor attributes include damage to elites, burn, disorient, and blind deaf resistances, and XP on kill. Critical hit chance can roll on the mask with a maximum roll of 4%. And this is a poor decision for your one major attribute roll, as SMGs already feature a native critical hit chance of 23%. In addition, critical hit chance can be found in higher percentages on most SMG weapon mods or through the use of pulse. For players looking for even more critical hit chance, they could also roll Vicious onto their primary weapon for an additional 10% critical hit chance when over 2 health bars. Enemy armor damage can roll at a maximum percentage of 8%, and while better than the rolls for the body armor, this too is not the most efficient choice. Resist All once again can roll on the mask, and from the body armor discussion, you know to stay away from this attribute. Health on kill can roll at 5%, like the body armor, and in general, this is not needed for a defense build. Exotic damage resilience can roll at 11% like the body armor, but is once again not needed for a proficient shield user, as they can simply rotate quickly to point their shield towards the incoming blast radius. Skill power can roll at a maximum roll of 10,030. This is my selection for my major attribute on the mask. You will need somewhere around 121,000 to 125,000 skill power on your classified defense build to help set the baseline strength for the shield before all of the health stacks on top of it. This means that when available, you will need to look for large chunks of skill power without equipping gear mods with skill power. If you choose to use a different major attribute other than skill power on the mask, plan on needing to equip 3 of your 5 gear mods with large skill power rolls to compensate for this design change. Now, I do not recommend you build your gear set like this, as it really limits your build later on. For the minor attribute, I chose Damage to Elites at a maximum roll of 12%, as I use my build for both PvP and PvE, and in-game PvE really requires Damage to Elites. The mask and the knee pads are the only 2 gear pieces that can roll with Damage to Elites, and unlike something like enemy armor damage, which is disabled once an NPC is stripped of their armor, Damage to Elites is a constant damage bonus anytime I am firing at an elite level NPC. Now, if I was strictly using my defense build for PvP, then I would have chosen Burn Resistance at a maximum roll of 17%. So to recap the attributes for the mask, for both PvP and PvE, I would recommend you choose Skill Power as your major attribute. For PvE, try for Damage to Elites as your minor attribute, and for PvP, Burn Resistance is the smart choice. The knee pads can roll with a native armor roll ranging from 1,419 up to a maximum of 1,668, and like the mask and body armor, comes with 1 main stat roll and 2 fixed secondary rolls. Major attributes include critical hit damage, enemy armor damage, resist all, health, exotic damage resilience, and skill power. Minor attributes include damage to elites, shock, burn, disorient, blind deaf, disrupt and bleed resistances, and XP on kill. The only new addition to the major attribute selections is critical hit damage, and in general, this is not an efficient use of your attribute selection at only a 9% maximum roll. Critical hit damage can be found in much larger amounts on SMG Weapon Mods, the gloves at a maximum roll of 17%, and on the Deadly Weapon Talent at 15%. Enemy armor damage and resist all roll on the knee pads at their lowest percentages on any of the gear and are poor choices. Like on the body armor, health rolls in its highest amounts on the knee pads, but is not needed for our build, as there is another major attribute that is much more beneficial to our build concept. Exotic damage resilience rolls in lower percentages on the knee pads than that of the body armor and mask, and if we passed on this attribute for those gear pieces, it makes sense to do the same with the knee pads. Skill power is again my choice as my one major attribute, as like I mentioned before, you will need as much skill power as you can find on your gear pieces to meet that 121 to 125,000 skill power level to set the maximum baseline level for shield toughness. Minor attributes are much like on the mask, in that I chose damage to elites since I do quite a bit of PvE along with burn and bleed resistances. For a strict PvP build, strive for strictly resistances and forego the damage to elites. So to recap for the Kneepads, for both PvP and PvE, choose Skill Power as your major attribute. For PvE, Damage to Elites is a smart selection, along with Burn and Bleed resistances. For PvP, Burn, Bleed, and whatever other resistance you choose. Next up is the backpack, which has a native armor roll ranging from 1,135 up to a maximum of 1,334, one main stat roll, and 2 fixed secondary rolls. Major attribute selections include critical hit damage, health, skill power, and weapon stability. For minor attributes, you have burn, disrupt, and bleed resistances, along with ammo capacity. The only new addition to major attributes is weapon stability, and while this attribute is great when paired with assault rifles, it really is not needed when using your shield and SMG in combo. Critical hit damage can be found in larger amounts elsewhere, and health rolls in lower amounts here than on other gear pieces. Now this once again leaves us with what I picked as my major attribute, skill power. Now if you have selected skill power on your mask, Kneepads, and now backpack, you should have enough to reach the 121 to 125k skill power plateau and set the maximum strength baseline for your shield. For the minor attribute, I chose more ammo capacity as I do quite a bit of PvE with this build. If I were strictly using this for PvP, I would probably go with more burn or disrupt resistance. Now a quick recap of the backpack leads us to again selecting skill power for both PvP and PvE. For the minor attribute, I would recommend ammo capacity for PvE and either burn or disrupt resistance for PvP. The gloves can be found with native armor rolls ranging from 852 up to a maximum armor roll of 1001, one main stat roll, and 2 fixed secondary rolls. The gloves are unique in that they allow agents to select 3 major attributes with no minor attributes. Major attributes include critical hit chance, critical hit damage, SMG, assault, shotgun, LMG, pistol, or sniper rifle damage, enemy armor damage, health on kill, and skill haste. I personally chose to run both critical hit chance and critical hit damage on my gloves, along with the obvious weapon damage of SMG damage. At 12% all weapon damage, SMG damage is just too much damage to give up. If you want to give up anything on your build for another attribute, the gloves would be the place to do so. You could choose skill haste or enemy armor damage over crit hit chance, as both the haste and EAD percentages are maximum available for your gear. This would especially make sense if you consistently run with another squad mate that has a strong pulse and can make up for the loss in critical hit chance. Besides the non-SMG damage types, the only choice I would avoid is health on kill. So to recap on the gloves, I personally use crit hit chance and crit hit damage along with SMG damage for both PvP and PvE. However, depending on your specific needs, you may want to substitute an enemy armor damage for PvE or skill haste in PvP in place of critical hit chance. I was forced into my decision to run crit hit chance as I needed to use my 2 recalibrations to select SMG damage and crit hit damage, but in the end, it's really up to you. The holster is the final piece of gear and can be found with native armor rolls ranging from 852 up to 1001 and is unique in that all 3 stats of firearms, stamina, and electronics are all main stat rolls ranging from 1274 up to 1401. The holster has 4 major attributes to select from, including critical hit chance, health, weapon reload speed, and skill haste. Now both crit hit chance and health roll in lower amounts on the holster than on other gear and should be instantly eliminated from consideration. This leaves weapon reload speed and skill haste. SMGs already reload quickly, ranging from the upper 1 seconds to lower 2 second range, so I would eliminate this attribute as well. This leaves us with only skill haste, which is always a solid selection. So to recap for our build on the holster for both PvP and PvE, the best selection is skill haste. On screen now is a full visual breakdown of how I have spec'd my defense gear set, along with possible substitutions if you were only wanting to specifically run either PvP or PvE. As you can see, I have not included any suggestions for weaponry, weapon talents, gear mods, or performance mods, as those will come in the next sections which will complete this field guide. There is not a lot of variance between an input PvP or PvE build with defense other than substituting out resistances for damage to elites. Skill haste is always a solid selection, along with the necessary skill power rolls to set the strongest baseline for your shield health. Now I know some of you will stop the video right here and start commenting about a 6k stamina build for PvE, and I have my theories on all that, along with my suggestions for input and output D3 builds, but that comes later in the video. So now that we've gone through each gear piece in depth and made the smartest decisions for our build in terms of attributes, let's transition over to gear and performance mods, as there is a lot of misinformation when it comes to these mods and how best to use them with the defense gear set. The most commonly asked questions I receive via Twitter or on my previous defense build guides have to do with modding, as most players really don't know what they are or do. So let's first start off with the gear mods, and this is really quite easy. You need to purchase, loot, or craft 5 stamina gear mods with a maximum main stat roll of 267 along with 3% skill haste. If you are strictly using this build for PvE and want to add on some additional damage to elites, you will need to look to loot or purchase superior stamina mods with a maximum DTE roll of 4%. However, you need to make sure you are not dipping below the 9k stamina plateau, as the maximum stamina mod roll available on superior gear mods is only 214. This will reduce your stamina by 53 points, and well, you get the idea. These superior stamina mods with DTE are great for high level PvE as long as you have enough stamina to stay over the 9k mark. For PvP, superior mods with DTE are worthless, and you should instead revert to my previous recommendation of 5 high-end stamina mods with 3% skill haste. If all 5 of your gear mods have stamina as the main stat roll, you will reach the 9k stamina mark, and the potential 15% extra skill haste will make getting your shield or EMP sticky back off cooldown that much faster. Next, we will need to take a look at performance mods for the ballistic shield, and this is where most of the confusion can be found. There are 3 performance mods available for agents to select from, and 4 performance mod slots between the holster, kneepads, and backpack. The first performance mod available is Shield Health, and this is by far the worst of the 3 performance mods to choose. If you have followed my build guide, your ballistic shield should be somewhere in the area of 2.3 to 2.4 million health already, and these mods are simply not needed. The second performance mod available is Ballistic Shield Damage Resiliency, and at a maximum roll, these can help mitigate up to 5% incoming damage from damaging your shield. If you equip 4 of these performance mods at the same time, you can add up to 20% damage resiliency to your shield, and these are the mods of choice when it comes to PvP. If you remember back to our defense gear set bonuses, by equipping 3 pieces of defense gear, your agent receives 10% additional shield damage resiliency and a further 5% more resiliency for the 5-piece bonus. This stacks on top of the base shield damage resiliency of 10% to add up to 25% ballistic shield damage resiliency. Add on 4 of these damage resiliency mods at 5% apiece, and you will be up to 45% ballistic shield damage resiliency. This essentially means that half of the incoming damage your shield receives will be mitigated and will not harm your shield health. These mods are essential for PvP for the reason that other agents have a damage multiplier versus your shield of nearly 4 times versus normal. Now without these mods, your shield is stripped away very quickly and you are left exposed and without your most important piece of equipment, your shield. Now, a hidden effect of these mods is that they also apply that same damage resiliency to your agent while the shield is activated. So if you were shot from the sides or back while the shield is out, your agent will mitigate 45% of incoming damage. To give you an idea of how strong that damage resiliency is, a survivor link can mitigate 50% of incoming damage. So if you decide to mod your D3 build in this manner, you will essentially be a walking survivor link that doesn't have a timer and is only deactivated when the shield is not present on screen. The third and final type of performance mods are the ballistic shield damage mods, and these are the most confusing to agents as they read the title and think that these mods do something completely different than what they actually do. Contrary to what many agents think, these mods do not enhance shield bash damage, but instead add all weapon damage to your SMG when your shield is deployed. What makes these mods so confusing, besides the title, is that you can't see their effects when in the character screen. Their effects can only be seen when you are out of the menu and either in combat or at the shooting range with the shield deployed. Each one of these mods can add 4% weapon damage to your SMG when having the ballistic shield deployed. So if you were to equip 4 of these mods at 4% additional damage, you can add up to 16% all weapon damage on top of the baseline 10% the shield already awards a player. All in total, if you use these performance mods, you can add up to 26% all weapon damage to your SMG, which is one of the strongest weapon damage gains in the game. So now that we've covered how best to mod or classify gear for both PvP and PvE and discussed at length all 3 performance mods, let's now shift to weaponry and weapon mods. Being able to protect and maintain our shield in combat is only half of the equation to a solid defense build. You also need the firepower to fight back, and since we are strictly speaking of SMGs, let's first discuss the base weaponry and which will work best for your build concept. There are currently 10 different SMG families to choose from, which vary greatly in rate of fire, base damage, and fire type. In addition, 4 of the 10 different SMG types also have exotic equivalents, each with their own unique weapon talents. Mix in the fact that each weapon can be looted or purchased with its own RNG starting damage value and critical hit chance, and you see where this is going with an overwhelming amount of choices. So to simplify this selection process, let me first come out and tell you which SMGs you should consider and which you should not. You can instantly mark off your list the SMG 9s, AUGs, Vectors, TA-21s, UMPs, and Thompsons, as each one of these SMG types do have merit, but can be outperformed by the remaining weaponry on this list. This leaves us with the MP5s, PP19s, MP7s, and the MPX, better known as the House. For PvE, there is still a lot of value to be found in the MP5s, PP19s, and MP7s, as they all bring something above average to your arsenal. MP5s offer up a strong mix of rate of fire, base damage, and excellent stability, along with a starting magazine of 32 rounds. PP19s are hands down the best sustained damage SMG in the game, as they start off with a massive 53 round magazine that can reach over 100 rounds once you equip a mag mod. Although the PP19 fires 100 rounds per minute slower than the MP5, it is able to deliver impressive firepower on target with its high base damage and excellent stability. The MP7 reigns above all other SMGs in rate of fire, with an insane 950 rounds per minute, and coupled with a sub 2-second reload, can deliver magazines of ammo on target in short order. However, the strongest SMG currently in the game is the House, which is an exotic weapon that cannot be purchased, but instead must be looted in-game. The House has an awesome combination of rate of fire, decent base damage, 30 round starting magazine, and 2-second reload time that really make it the best choice to pair with our defense build for both PvP and PvE. The House is further enhanced by its unique talent of card counter in the 3rd or free slot, which essentially gives you a 20% increased damage buff that flips from the top half to bottom half of the magazine every 15 seconds. Now, this is not to say that if you don't have the House, you are not going to be competitive, as the aforementioned list of SMGs are still strong. In certain cases, like for my non-classified defense build, which I use for approximately 70% of my PvE content, I still use a custom crafted MP5 and it dispatches NPCs with ease. But for the highest level PvE work, or when I take my classified defense build into the Dark Zone, I always switch over to the House to give me the best possible odds of winning PvP encounters. So now that we've determined which SMGs are best to pair with our defense build for both PvP and PvE, it's time to review over the available weapon talents and discuss which could pair with our defense build. There are over 20 weapon talents, not including unique talents that you can loot or craft your SMG with. Now, for the purpose of our classified defense build, which has just over 4K firearms, 9K stamina, and just under 3K electronics, we need to steer clear of any weapon talent with electronics requirements to unlock, as we won't be able to meet those necessary levels and will therefore have a useless weapon talent. In addition, since I have already said that we should try to equip the house as our weapon of choice, we will not be able to roll off the card counter talent in the third free slot in place of something else. Taking a look at the available SMG Weapon Talent list on the right side of the screen, I will quickly adjust the list to remove any SMG Weapon Talent that requires a certain level in electronics to unlock, which leaves us with the following: accurate, brutal, capable, deadly, destructive, hurried, meticulous, as it only requires 2,875 in electronics, predatory, for the exact same reason as meticulous, self-preserved, stable, sustained, unforgiving, and vicious. Responsive is an ideal weapon talent for an SMG, but the firearms requirement of 4,791 is too high for our build and was therefore eliminated from our weapon talent list. Next, for the sake of narrowing down this list, we can remove accurate, capable, and stable from this list, as they really serve no purpose on our defense build. This leaves us with 10 weapon talents, with some being PvP specific, PvE specific, and others can be used in both. To start off, let's take a look at the PvE specific weapon talents, which are brutal, destructive, predatory, self-preserved, and sustained. When I take my classified defense build into a legendary mission on a solo run, I use a house with destructive and predatory as my weapon of choice. Destructive is ideal in high-level PvE work, as remember that your SMG has no native enemy armor damage, and challenge, heroic, and legendary level NPCs are primarily protected by their high levels of armor. Predatory provides a steady heal for when I do take damage from flanking LMB and can keep me topped up without the need for first aid or a support station. Self-preserved and sustained are not as efficient as predatory, and in general, I would say they are not needed. Brutal could be a decent selection for your SMG, as it only has a native 50% headshot damage bonus, but I like the combination of destructive and predatory for my highest level PvE work. The only weapon talent I would truly consider PvP specific is Unforgiving, and I know there is a bit of debate as to whether you should equip this weapon talent with your defense build. Unforgiving grants you huge amounts of damage increases once you have taken enough damage to reach your second and third health bars, and it is one of my weapon talents I choose to equip on my SMG when I am engaging in PvP. This leaves us with deadly, hurried, meticulous, and vicious. And these 4 weapon talents could be considered for both PvP and PvE. I personally like and use Deadly on my PvP setup, as SMGs are built around and for critical hits. Deadly grants you a constant 15% critical hit damage increase, and this is an obvious choice for a defense build. Meticulous is generally not considered a top-tier weapon talent with an SMG, as reloads are fast already, and this could better serve another weapon type like an LMG. Now this leaves us with Hurried and Vicious, and if any of the SMG weapon talents could be debated, these are the two. Hurried was first introduced with the PP19 back in Update 1.3 to help it reload faster, as at the time it had the slowest SMG reload speed, clocking in at 2.35 seconds. In order to take advantage of Hurried, you need to consistently crit hit your target, and each time you do crit, it reduces your next reload time by 10% to a minimum of 1 second. This can be helpful in terms of burst damage, meaning how quickly you can fire your weapon, reload, and get back to firing, but I tend not to use this weapon talent, as at its best reload speed reduction, it saves you about 1.07 seconds on a reload, and I prefer to equip my SMG with damage talents versus utility talents. Vicious can add 10% critical hit chance to your SMG when you are above 2 health segments, and I know of D3 users that are strongly for and against equipping this weapon talent. I choose not to use Vicious for several reasons. Number one is that with my current setup, I am already in the lower 40% range for crit hit chance dry, without Vicious, and this is without the 12.5% that the precision skill adds once I headshot an enemy. And the second reason is that I do not like to equip weapon talents that only reward you if you are on full health or within a certain range for them to stay active. If you are taking enough damage from multiple angles in PvP, you can quickly fall into that second health bar, which will render Vicious useless. Now, just to clarify, I am not saying that Hurried and Vicious are without merit and should therefore be avoided. Quite the contrary. I am simply stating that for me, I do not use them. On screen now is an overview of my SMGs for both PvP, High Level PvE, and regular PvE, and just to verbally recap them for you, I use a house with Deadly and Unforgiving for PvP, a house with Destructive and Predatory for High Level PvE like Legendary missions, and finally a custom crafted MP5 with Determined, Skilled, and Commanding for regular PvE like daily missions and HVTs. Now, if that MP5 setup is a bit confusing, I will explain that build in the final section of this field guide, but for now, let's discuss the weapon mods to finish off this weaponry section of the video. Weapon mods for your defense build are really straightforward, and this is the section of your build where you want to concentrate on picking up large portions of critical hit damage. So let's start at the front of the weapon and first discuss muzzle mods. Although there are 11 different muzzle mods that can be found in-game that fit an SMG, there are only 2 that warrant your attention. The obvious choice is the Loud Vent Break with a maximum critical hit damage roll of 19%. In addition, be on the lookout for minor attributes of headshot damage at 6% and critical hit chance at 3%. The other muzzle mod I equip from time to time is the Tyrant Suppressor, with a major attribute of critical hit chance at a maximum roll of 7.5%. Minor attributes to aim for are headshot damage at 6% and critical hit damage at 4%. Now, although you will be giving up some overall damage when you do crit with the Tyrant Suppressor, it keeps your noise signature down and raises your ability to crit more often with the higher crit hit chance. Moving backwards up the weapon, and we arrive at the grips. And for your knowledge, you will never find a grip with either headshot damage or critical hit chance, as they do not roll with these attributes. There are 4 grips available in-game that fit the SMG, but for your build, you will want either the short grip or small grip. And to be clear, even though these 2 grips have different names, their stats are identical. Ideally, look for a grip with 19% critical hit damage along with reload speed at a maximum percentage of 4%, and if I had my preference, I would strive for accuracy as the second minor attribute, although stability instead of accuracy is not the end of the world. Optimal range is the minor attribute to try to avoid when it comes to your ideal SMG grip. Next, we arrive at the magazine, and although there are 4 magazine types to choose from, the one you want for your defense build is the extended magazine at a maximum percentage of 121%. More critical hit chance at 3% and rate of fire at 5.6% are the 2 minor attributes you are ideally aiming for. These little bits of crit hit chance you can find on your weapon mods can really push your critical hit chance steadily upwards. Rate of fire will increase your weapon's overall firing speed and therefore will increase your burst damage. And when it comes to PvP, you want to try to elevate your burst damage potential. The final weapon mod are the scopes, and there are 12 to choose from that are compatible with an SMG. But for your build, look for the C79 3.4 times scope, as it can be found with a maximum critical hit damage roll of 19%. Critical hit chance at 3% and headshot damage at 6% are the minor attributes you want. So, to quickly recap, if you are able to loot these exact weapon mods and at maximum percentage rolls for both the major and minor attributes, your mods will have added to your build 57% critical hit damage, 9% critical hit chance, 12% headshot damage, 4% reload speed, 5.6% rate of fire, and either 2.5% accuracy or 3% stability depending on what you select on your grip. These weapon mods are the last little bits of fine-tuning an experienced player strives for, as they can really elevate your build, and all of these attributes lead to more damage output. Now, to be clear, finding these exact mods and at maximum percentages on both the major and minor attributes will be maddening. But I always make sure to check any weapon mods that I loot or craft, just in case they are the exact ones I'm looking for. Now that we've covered weaponry, weapon talents, and weapon mods, it's time to transition over to the last section of this field guide and discuss some tips and tricks and general thoughts I have about defense. Well, we've reached the final portion of this defense field guide, and this section is dedicated to any tips, tricks, and general ideas I have about defense based on my many hours dedicated to using this one gear set. First up are the skills and talents you need to pair with your classified defense build, and this is really straightforward. For both PvP and PvE, the talents I use are On the Move, Precision, One is None, and Combat Medic. On the Move grants you even more damage resiliency for killing an enemy and stacks on what your resiliency mods and defense gear already award your character. Precision gives you a flat buff for headshotting an enemy and can help bolster your critical hit chance. One is None gives you a 50% chance of not consuming a bullet for landing a headshot, and at the ranges you should be engaging enemies with your shield. Face tanking is the name of the game. And finally, Combat Medic, as if and when your shield does get dangerously low on health and close to breaking, you can consume a medkit and replenish 40% of its health. A side effect of consuming the medkit while having this talent active is that your squad mates will also receive that 40% health bonus. Skills will require that you equip the Ballistic shield, and once selected, only the Master mod will be active. From here, the PvP and PvE skill loadouts will vary just a bit. Now for PvP, I use the EMP Sticky to help negate striker stacks, turrets, and other skills from staying active, and this is where the skill haste that I recommended for your gear pieces and mods comes in handy. For PvE, I like to use a flame turret when tackling legendary missions to help stop fast-moving LMB from gaining a firing advantage on my flanks. Other possible skills could be First Aid or Support Station, but with only 125k skill power and less than 3000 electronics, those heals will be fairly weak. Next are my general thoughts about non-classified and classified defense gear, and I have not heard anyone say what I'm about to say, although I tried to hint to it several times during the course of this field guide. You don't need classified defense gear to make a competent shield build. I've shown you several clips during this video of me using my PvE non-classified defense gear set, and even though it is not min-maxed or recalibrated to ideal attributes, it is more than capable of handling approximately 70% of PvE content in this game. This Captain America build is built around 3 pieces of mixed non-classified classified defense gear, 2 pieces of Striker's battle gear, and a Ninja Bike messenger bag to unlock the 4-piece defense and 3-piece Striker's gear set bonuses. In addition, I've not tried to go for stamina marks, but have instead invested gear mods and main stats into electronics so that it will unlock the determined, skilled, and commanding weapon talents on my MP5. This build is custom built to be able to pop tactical links back to back while solo, and allows me to rip through elite level NPCs with ease. Now with that statement I just made fresh in your mind, I wanted to clarify my thoughts on a few terms I used earlier in this video and that concern input and output defense builds. Now when I speak of an output shield build, that is a build that forgoes the 9k stamina requirements and throws as much stats, mods, and weapon talents into outputting damage. A prime example of an output build is my Captain America build, as it is designed for solo work on challenge difficulty PvE content. With this build, I am not concerned with proccing squad buffs for absorbing damage or overall tankiness, but instead, I am focusing on applying as much damage to the NPCs as I can in the shortest amount of time, hence the output moniker. When you have a classified 9k stamina defense build, that is what I refer to as an input build. It is designed to absorb as much damage as possible without the shield faltering, while constantly applying solo or squad buffs depending on what damage type you have absorbed. Your purpose has shifted from damage dealer to squad support, as your armor and damage buffs will benefit your squad mates in both PvP and PvE. In addition, the elevated threat level that the shield applies while in PvE will draw enemy aggro directly at you, giving your teammates relief from incoming fire and allow them to flank and get into optimal firing angles. And this brings me to my final statement about non-classified versus classified defense gear, and it has to do with these build guides I have been seeing for PvE where the content creators use classified defense gear but with a 6k stamina build. Now, I do not understand why somebody would take the time to build a PvE specific 6k stamina defense build, as for me, the negatives outweigh the positives with this build concept. You are giving up nearly 1 million shield health with this type of build, and if that is the way you want to theorycraft your build, then why not just use non-classified gear like my Captain America build and spec into stamina to hit the 6k mark. By creating a 6k stamina classified build, you are essentially turning classified gear into non-classified, but with a few extra perks that the 5 and 6 piece bonuses grant you. If you plan on attempting legendary missions solo, then you will want the 9k stamina and necessary skill power marks to get the maximum shield health and resiliency. If you were only going to be using your defense gear set for heroic incursions on down to challenge difficulty missions, then creating a 6k stamina classified defense build is a waste of resources. Furthermore, with a 6k stamina build on legendary missions, your shield will be depleted in half the time of a 9k stamina build, and you will be forced to take cover and engage the LMB from medium range. At this point, your SMG is not going to deliver optimal damage and will struggle to stay on target while you wait for your shield health to replenish, and you can see where this is going. Now I'm going to stop this topic here, but wanted to state that for me, a 6k stamina defense build just doesn't make sense. Moving on, and I wanted to quickly offer up some tips when it comes to shield situational awareness, and this really boils down to anticipation coupled with memory. The easy part is seeing what's directly in front of you on screen and putting your shield between the incoming rounds and your agent. What is not so easy is learning to move and strafe to maintain your firing angle advantages, as without this, you will quickly get into trouble and find yourself surrounded. Too many inexperienced D3 users plow right into the middle of combat and are quickly downed, as they are simply taking damage from too many areas and can't effectively block it. A rudimentary way of thinking of this is to use the 45-degree angle method, and it goes something like this. If you see an enemy about to flank out past what is a 45-degree angle from center point on your shield, they will gain the firing advantage on you, and you need to preemptively react to their movements. For example, if I am in combat with an enemy target and I see another enemy starting to sprint outwards to either side, I need to match their angle of attack. In this case, instead of pointing directly at the flanking enemy and therefore exposing a good portion of my agent to the first enemy I was initially engaged with, I need to strafe in the same direction that the flanking enemy is attempting to take and keep my shield in a perpendicular angle to both targets. This will keep both enemies firing at my shield instead of my agent and will allow me to head off the attempted enemy flank. Another concept you need to learn with shield combat, especially in PvP, is that you need to lead the push against enemy targets and allow your squad mates to essentially ride on your hips while you absorb most of the incoming damage. Now this will require constant communication between the entire squad so that they know which direction you are intending to head and who or what it is that you intend to attack. While in squad PvP, I will even make callouts if I am intending to stay close to or hug an object or swing out wide around cover so that my squad mates know which angle they should take to avoid shooting my character in the back and therefore wasting valuable rounds. My final tip for D3 users is that you need to develop a sense of when to advance and when to retreat. Just because you are using a ballistic shield does not make you completely invincible, and if you go down, it seriously hurts the rest of the squad, as they will be without your squad armor and weapon damage buffs. Learn to push when your buffs have procced and you are at your strongest advantage, and learn to pull back when the other squad has activated their ultimate abilities or when you are being caught in a pincer move, which essentially means that enemies are attempting to squeeze you from both sides at the same time. Also, experiment with and learn how to proc your shield buffs through the use of grenades to proc the damage buff and increase your damage by 30% for 12 seconds, as it can be a truly devastating maneuver if executed properly. And finally, you need to learn how to read a battle and know when you are completely surrounded. Although breaking shield and sprinting should be avoided, there are times that you need to change positions quickly, and slowly walking with your shield out and activated will not suffice. Knowing when to sprint and where to go is something that will take practice, but once you have the hang of it, will keep you in battles for much longer periods of time. Ultimately, using the defense gear set is about taking the time to learn its hidden statistics, buffs, and limitations. After that, it's down to practice and familiarity. You won't be the fastest agent on the battlefield or hit the hardest in solo PvP, but through the use of smart tactics and using your tankiness and absorption to your advantage, you can even the playing field. And in squad play, your teammates will love you for the constant squad buffs you provide. This is going to wrap up my defense field guide, and as always, I look forward to reading your thoughts in the comment section below. If you could take the time to rate the video with a huge thumbs up, it would be greatly appreciated. If you want some more LtBuzzLitebeer and my Division content in your lives, make sure to pound that sub button and follow me on Twitter at LtBuzzLitebeer. Before I log off, I would like to say a huge thank you to the OG Swag Panda for his incredible intros, branding, and video artwork. Marco Style for his behind-the-scenes consulting on some of the hidden programming and mathematics of the Division, and my squad mates through many of the video clips, including Cal Streams, Kempa Swee, Mr. Micah, and Viper DR. Until my next The Division video, this has been LtBuzzLitebeer saying peace out.